2 years ago, I made a choice that completely altered the course of my life. It's a decision that forever changed my marriage, my self-perception, and everything I thought I understood about love. I'll never forget the moment everything came crashing down. It was a quiet afternoon in a hotel room, one I had secretly visited countless times before. There, I was with Kevin, my boss, tangled in a situation that had started innocently enough but soon spiraled out of control. But that day, everything shifted. The door swung open with a sudden force, and there stood David, my husband, his face contorted in a mixture of shock, rage, and overwhelming hurt. Before I could even say a word, his hand came up with a force that struck me across the face, the sound of the slap lingering in the otherwise silent room. Kevin, fumbling with his clothes, muttered an apology that was barely audible, but I couldn't focus on him. My mind was stuck in a haze, unable to fully process the reality of the situation. The look on David's face is something I'll carry with me forever. More than just anger or betrayal, it was sheer devastation. In that one moment, I realized I had broken something irreplaceable, something that might never heal. David left, and I didn't hear from him for a week. I stayed with a friend, silently waiting for a call or text from him, but it never came. When I finally returned to our house, I found it eerily empty. His things were gone, and all that remained was a note on the kitchen counter. I can't do this anymore. He didn't give me a chance to explain. The divorce was quick and agonizing. David didn't ask for anything extra. He didn't contest anything. It was as if he wanted to erase me from his life as cleanly and painlessly as possible. We sold the house, divided the money, and though we didn't have children, the emotional damage was still immense. The slap was never addressed, not by David, not by anyone. It seemed like an insignificant detail in the wake of everything else. I didn't file a report, and I didn't speak about it to anyone. Not even Kevin, who had disappeared soon after, transferring to another company. The affair that once felt exciting and full of promise had quickly turned into a mess of fallout, and I was left to face the consequences alone. I hadn't anticipated how utterly alone I would feel. No husband, no lover, and certainly no respect from the colleagues who had quickly learned about my affair. Over the past 2 years, I had plenty of time to reflect on the mess I'd made of my life. I tried to piece together the wreckage of my choices, diving deep into therapy, and asking myself what had driven me to betray David so recklessly. It wasn't that I was unhappy with him. David had been a wonderful husband, kind, supportive, and loving. No, the affair wasn't about him. It was about me, a desperate attempt to find something I thought I had lost within myself. But when the dust settled, all I found was emptiness. To escape the overwhelming guilt, I moved to a new city, hoping for a fresh start. I found a new job and rented a small apartment, trying my best to rebuild. But even though the scenery changed, the guilt didn't. It followed me everywhere, lurking in the quiet moments, constantly reminding me of the pain I had caused. I tried reaching out to David, sending messages, hoping to apologize again, but I never heard back. I didn't blame him. If the roles had been reversed, I wasn't sure I could have forgiven him either. Then, about 6 months ago, I heard through a mutual friend that David had moved on. He was seeing someone new. Her name was Anna. Everything I wasn't. Kind, stable, and loyal. A pang of jealousy hit me, but it wasn't just jealousy. It was a final blow, a clear indication that any hope of reconciliation was gone. David was moving forward with his life, and I was left to deal with the painful truth. I was a chapter in his past, one he was eager to close. Still, I kept working on myself. I threw myself into therapy, trying to rebuild my self-esteem. Though I continued to work on healing, there were days when the shame threatened to overwhelm me. I wondered if I'd ever truly forgive myself for what I'd done. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, I received a message from David. It was short, to the point. "I'd like to talk if you're open to it." My heart skipped a beat as I read his words. I had no idea what he wanted to discuss, but I agreed to meet him. Part of me feared that he was reaching out to finally release the anger he had kept bottled up during the divorce, while another part of me secretly hoped that he had found it in his heart to forgive me. We met at a quiet park, one we used to visit during the early years of our marriage. When I saw him, he looked different. Older, more mature, and somehow at peace. There was a calmness to him that made me feel both nervous and relieved. "Hi, Megan," he said, his voice softer than I remembered. "Hi, David," I replied, barely above a whisper. We sat down on a bench, and for a while, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick, heavy with everything we'd been through. Finally, David broke the silence. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. "About us. About what happened." I nodded, unable to trust myself to speak. "I want you to know that I've moved on," he continued. "I'm with someone now, and I'm happy." He paused before adding, "But there's something that's been bothering me for a while. Something I've been thinking about since that day. The day I hit you, I'm not proud of that," David said quietly, his voice low but sincere. "I shouldn't have done it, no matter how hurt I was. I've been carrying that with me, and I wanted to apologize." His words hit me like a tidal wave. I had braced myself for accusations, for anger, for everything I deserved. But an apology? That I never expected. I never thought he would express regret for his actions when I was the one who had betrayed him. "David, you don't have to apologize," I said, my voice trembling, feeling a lump form in my throat. "I'm the one who—" He cut me off, his tone firm but gentle. "What you did hurt me in ways I can't even explain. But that doesn't justify what I did. I should have handled it better. I should have walked away." We sat there in silence, but this time, the quiet felt different. It felt lighter, like some heavy weight was slowly being lifted from both of us. "I'm really glad you're happy, David," I said after a moment. "I truly mean that. I'm sorry for everything." "I know, Megan," he replied, and for the first time, I saw the faintest smile tug at his lips. "I've forgiven you. I had to for my own sake. I hope you can find it in yourself to forgive you too." We spoke for a while longer, catching up on life, sharing memories of the good times that once were. It wasn't a reunion, and it didn't undo the pain or the mistakes we had both made. But it was a tone I hadn't realized I needed, towards closure. When we parted ways, I felt a strange sense of peace settle in me. I would always regret the choice that led to the end of my marriage, but hearing David's words helped me release some of the shame that had clung to me for so long. I knew I still had a long way to go. 2 years after everything had fallen apart, I was finally starting to rebuild. Not by pretending the past didn't happen, but by accepting it, learning from it, and working on becoming a better version of myself in the present. As I walked away from the park, I knew the road ahead would still be difficult, but I was ready to face it, one step at a time.